The rain was soft that morning, barely there, like a whisper on the skin. Eleanor Voss stood by the window of her home office, watching the clouds smother the city skyline. Her reflection in the glass looked older than usual. Maybe it was the lighting. Maybe it was the weight she carried behind her ribs, the quiet suspicion that had grown teeth. For 6 years, she'd been married to Adam. Sharp-suited, ambitious, and unfailingly charming. He was everything a girl like Eleanor had once thought she wanted. A hedge fund manager with a portfolio as polished as his smile. They met at a gallery opening downtown. She sold luxury interiors. He sold people on the illusion of security. From the outside, they were glossy and enviable, two people who had it all. But something had shifted in Adam, in the way he kissed her like he was late. The long nights, the sudden phone calls, the texts he tilted away from her line of sight. It wasn't loud. Infidelity never starts with thunder. It trickles, subtle and steady, until it floods. Eleanor never thought she'd be the kind of woman who hired a private investigator. That was for soap operas and jilted trophy wives. But on a cold Thursday morning, she found herself dialing the number of someone named Gray Langston, a retired cop turned PI who worked out of a cramped office above a pawn shop in Midtown. He didn't ask many questions. He didn't seem surprised. He simply asked for a recent photo of Adam and his work schedule. When she handed over the information, her hands shook. "It'll take a few days," Gray said, barely glancing at her. "You sure you want to know?" That question haunted her. By day 3, Gray had footage. He called her back in. She could hear the whir of an old ceiling fan in the background as he queued up the video on his desktop. His voice was flat, clinical, as he explained what she was about to see. But nothing could have prepared her for the twist. The first clip showed Adam at a cafe near his office. He wasn't alone. A woman joined him. Young, red coat, brunette bob, confident posture. Not particularly flirtatious. They were laughing, but Eleanor had seen Adam laugh with clients like that. It was nothing until the second clip. Another angle, different location. A hotel bar in the evening. The same woman. Adam leaned in too close. His hand grazed her waist, but something gnawed at Eleanor. The woman in the red coat. Her profile. The way she held her drink. The silver ring on her right index finger. It was her. The footage zoomed out, just enough for her to see her own face. The woman Adam had been meeting was her. Eleanor Voss. Only it wasn't the Eleanor who watched the footage. It was another version of her. One she didn't recognize. Hair dyed darker. Makeup heavier. Glasses. A fake mole on her cheek. Her mind went blank. Breath caught in her throat. She looked at Gray. That's me, isn't it?" Gray leaned back, folding his arms. "I thought you might say that." Eleanor hadn't been sleepwalking. She hadn't lost time. She hadn't had some psychological breakdown. She knew what this was. She had pretended to be someone else. Deliberately, methodically. She had a name for that woman. Her alias, Claire Whitmore. And just like that, it all came rushing back. Claire was a creation. A mask Eleanor had crafted 8 months ago after a chance encounter with one of Adam's former colleagues. A man named Dorian Pike, who, in a drunken slip at a company event, told Eleanor that Adam was a charming bastard. "But you already know that, right?" He chuckled like it was harmless, but Eleanor's mind held on to the phrase like a noose tightening. Claire had been born shortly after. Eleanor rented a burner phone. She created a separate wardrobe, a different walk, a new perfume. She dyed her hair just slightly, enough to pass, but not enough to look in the mirror and forget who she was. And Claire began bumping into Adam in curated places, cafes he frequented, lobbies near his office. At first, it was just a test. She wanted to see if he'd flirt, if he'd stray, but Adam never once recognized her. He flirted. God, he flirted hard. The compliments, the way he asked questions, how he stayed too long when Claire touched his arm. It was a performance he'd rehearsed with other women before. Smooth, polished, calculated, and never once did he suspect. Eleanor thought she could stop, but she didn't, because deep down, she was addicted to watching who Adam really was, when he didn't know his wife was watching. Claire gave her access and control, until the moment Claire and Adam crossed a line. It happened in a hotel room. One Eleanor had booked under the alias. She didn't sleep with him, but she let it get close. Too close. He touched her like she was a prize, kissed her like he had no wife. And now she sat in a Pie's office, watching the scene unfold on screen. She had become both the betrayer and the betrayed. Gray's voice broke the silence. "You set him up, didn't you?" Eleanor didn't answer. She couldn't. What haunted her most wasn't Adam's infidelity. It was how far she'd gone to prove it. How easy it had been to lose herself. How being Claire made her feel alive again. Seen, wanted, powerful. Everything she hadn't felt in years. She didn't tell Gray that part. She just nodded slowly and asked for the footage. He handed it over in a thumb drive. No questions asked. Back home, Eleanor poured a glass of wine and replayed the footage. Over and over, studying her own expressions. The way she laughed, touched his arm, looked into his eyes. Claire was better at being desirable than Eleanor had ever been. The next morning, Eleanor sat across from Adam at breakfast. He was scrolling through emails, sipping his black coffee. She watched him, silently, like a stranger in her own kitchen. "Did you sleep okay?" he asked without looking up. "Yes," she lied. "You?" He shrugged. "Had a weird dream." She wanted to ask if Claire had been in it, but she didn't. Instead, she decided what to do next. She printed one still from the video, one of them kissing in the hotel bar, and mailed it to Adam's office in an unmarked envelope. No return address, no note, just the image. Then she waited. The next few days passed like a storm on mute. Adam became restless, jumpy. She caught him checking his office mailbox twice a day. Then his mood shifted, anxious, distracted. Something was unraveling. On the 6th day, he came home late. His tie was crooked, and there was panic behind his eyes. "You okay?" Eleanor asked. Adam paused. "Yeah, just weird stuff at work. Someone sent me this photo, really messed up." Her heart thudded. "What kind of photo?" she asked, feigning concern. He looked at her, testing. "It's personal. Not sure who sent it." That night, he stayed awake, pacing the hallway. Eleanor watched from their bedroom doorway, wondering what lie he was preparing. He didn't know that she already knew every line of it. But Eleanor had a new problem. Claire. She couldn't stop thinking about her, about how Adam had fallen for her, how easily she had slipped into that skin and become someone he desired. Part of her, God help her, missed it. And Weiss, Claire had gotten a message too. 1 week after she mailed the photo, a letter arrived at her P.O. box. The one she used for Claire's identity. It had no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with one sentence. "We need to talk." Eleanor dropped the paper. Her breath caught. He knew, or thought he knew, or suspected, or maybe someone else knew. It wasn't just a game anymore. She had set a trap, but now she didn't know who had sprung it. And somewhere in the dark corners of her mind, Claire smiled. The envelope was plain. No return address, no seal. Just her alias printed on the front in blocky, typed letters, Claire Whitmore. Inside, the message was colder than the February wind snaking through the cracks of Eleanor's bay window. "We need to talk." She read it 5 times. The script was typed, perfectly centered on thick cream stationery, the kind lawyers old money families might use. There was no clue as to where, when, or how. Just a summons, a whisper in the dark. For hours, she sat in the dim kitchen, staring at the letter as though it might blink first. She barely touched her tea. Her hands, usually so precise and graceful, trembled when she reached for her phone. She considered texting Gray, the PI. But what would she say? "Hey, remember how I hired you to catch my husband cheating and accidentally expose myself? Well, now someone's sending my fake identity letters and I don't know who." She tossed the phone aside. She was in too deep now. Gray was out. This was hers. That night, Adam didn't mention the letter again. He talked about a merger at work and asked if she wanted to try the new Italian place in Tribeca. She watched his lips move, but all she could hear was the echo of his lie. The man sitting across from her had fallen in love with a ghost and hadn't noticed it was his wife. She didn't sleep. The next morning, she checked Clay's burner phone. 1 missed call, no voicemail. The number was hidden. Her pulse stuttered. Later that day, another note arrived. This time, slid under the windshield of her car while she shopped at a boutique 2 towns over, one of Claire's favorite haunts. You're not the only one pretending. Her vision blurred. Her knees buckled just slightly as she looked around the nearly empty parking lot. Nothing. No figures. No cameras. No car she didn't recognize. Whoever was watching her knew her movements. Claire's movements. Which meant someone knew everything. She drove home in silence, headlights off for the last few blocks like she could vanish between the trees. That night, she poured 2 fingers of whiskey instead of wine. Claire liked whiskey. Eleanor hated it. The burn reminded her she was still awake, still real. At 2:11 a.m., her burner rang. She let it buzz until the final second, then answered. Silence. And then, I like the red coat. The voice was male. Calm. Smug. Eleanor's mouth went dry. Who is this? I think you already know. Or at least, Claire does. Click. The line went dead. She stood in the dark hallway. The phone pressed to her chest like a weapon she didn't know how to use. There was something bone-deep terrifying in the voice, not loud or threatening, but knowing, playful, like a cat circling a wounded bird. She couldn't sleep, couldn't blink. She sat up until sunrise, combing through every interaction she'd had in the last 6 months as Claire. Every conversation, every waiter, every bartender, every stranger on a bench. Had someone been watching her all along? The next morning, Eleanor did something she hadn't done in over a decade. She drove to her old studio. Before she married Adam, Eleanor had been a photographer, portraits, mostly. People fascinated her, especially the pieces they tried to hide. Claire had started in that studio. A few test selfies, some new makeup, an intentional slouch in posture, a change in laugh. A woman born behind the lens. Controlled. She unlocked the door and stepped into the dust. The windows were half covered. The place still smelled faintly of turpentine and cedar. The old hard drives were in a locked drawer. She powered one up. Buried in a folder labeled Mock Clients were dozens of video clips, footage she'd secretly recorded as Claire. Some were rehearsals. Others were actual meetups with Adam. She wasn't proud of it, but she hadn't deleted anything. As she clicked through, one file caught her eye. Unknown, 11:14 p.m.MP4. It was from 3 weeks ago. She didn't remember recording it. She hit play. It was footage from outside a restaurant. A black SUV was parked across the street. A woman in a red coat exited through the side alley. Eleanor leaned in. It was Claire. Same walk, same posture. But she hadn't been there that night. She paused the video. Looked closer. The coat. The gait. The way the woman tilted her head. It was her. But it wasn't her. The timestamp was from the same night Eleanor had been homesick with a migraine. She remembered because Adam had brought her soup and she'd slept for 12 hours. She rewound. The woman looked directly at the camera before walking away. She knew she was being recorded. Eleanor's stomach flipped. A doppelganger? Someone impersonating her impersonation? She closed the laptop, her breath sharp and shallow. Something had shifted. This wasn't about Adam anymore. This was about Claire. Someone had taken her mask and was wearing it better than she could. She called Gray. You sure you want to open this box? He asked. It's already open, she whispered. I think someone's been following me, or pretending to be me. There was a long pause. Where did you say you got that red coat? Eleanor frowned. Why? I saw someone in it yesterday. Thought it was you. But she didn't look at me. Just walked past. Where? Outside my office. But not by accident. She wanted me to see her. Eleanor's throat tightened. Do you have cameras? I do now. She met Gray that afternoon. He looked paler than she remembered. He handed her a flash drive. She didn't speak. She went home, locked her doors, poured a drink, and pressed play. The footage was grainy from across the street. Claire, same coat, same walk, but her hair was slightly longer. The mole was on the left cheek, not the right. A glitch, a crack in the mask. Eleanor hit pause. This woman wasn't copying Claire. She was copying Eleanor's version of Claire, with just enough off to seem intentional. There was a second clip. The woman walked up to Gray's door, slipped a note under it. We all wear masks. Some better than others. That night, Eleanor heard the sound of glass breaking downstairs. She grabbed a lamp and crept toward the noise. Nothing, except the back door was ajar. On the kitchen counter, next to a half-eaten apple Adam had left, was another note, folded in half. Neat, deliberate. Inside, "She's doing it better than you ever did." There was no signature, just one line, written in pen instead of type. A name, Naomi. Eleanor whispered the name aloud. It meant nothing, and yet it chilled her to the marrow. She checked the locks, sat on the floor, and cried for the first time in months. Not from fear, not from guilt, but from the feeling that her life, her identity, was slowly being hijacked, like someone was peeling her out of her own skin. She didn't know who Naomi was, but Naomi knew everything. The rain came down in steady sheets, masking the sound of Eleanor's breathing as she stood under the awning of Gray's office. Her coat was soaked. Her hands were trembling. The flash drive in her pocket felt like it was on fire. Inside, Gray had already poured 2 glasses of scotch. He didn't ask questions, just nodded for her to sit. For a moment, they both listened to the ice crack. "She has my smile," Eleanor said finally, "but not my eyes." Gray leaned forward. "You think Naomi was watching you the entire time?" "I don't think it," she replied, voice low. "I know it." The footage he'd handed her, the one from the security camera, showed Naomi tailing her in every corner of a fabricated life. The cafes, the hotels, even the park bench where Eleanor had once waited to meet Adam for a secret rendezvous. Naomi had been steps behind her, in the shadows, studying her every move like an understudy preparing for a role. But this wasn't imitation anymore. It was invasion. Eleanor had started this story chasing the truth about Adam. But now, it was clear. The real betrayal wasn't coming from her husband. It was coming from someone who knew how to wear her skin better than she did. Gray finally spoke. "Who is she, Eleanor?" She turned the glass slowly in her hands. "She's me. Or, she used to be." He didn't understand. Most people wouldn't. But Eleanor had once been a ghost herself. Claire Whitmore wasn't a name plucked from fantasy. It had been borrowed from an old case she'd photographed years ago. A domestic abuse victim who had disappeared, who needed a new identity to escape her life. Eleanor had helped her, given her the name Claire Whitmore, designed a backstory, new photos, even coached her voice. The real Claire had vanished into a new life. But someone else had been watching. Naomi, the woman Eleanor once thought was her shadow, was actually a remnant from a past she'd buried long ago. Naomi had been Claire's sister. She'd been left behind. And now, she was back, with a vengeance. That night, Eleanor returned home to find Adam waiting. The lights were off except for a single lamp in the living room. He held a thick manila envelope in his lap. She froze in the doorway. "I know everything," he said, eyes tired, voice calm. Eleanor didn't flinch. "How long have you known?" "Since the second date," he said. "Your handwriting didn't match the letter you sent me." She blinked. "Then why?" "Because you weren't pretending to be someone else," he said. "You were trying to be someone you used to be, and I wanted to know why." The envelope in his hands contained every surveillance photo, every receipt, every fake ID, but more than that, emails Eleanor had sent as Claire, printed out. Messages she never remembered writing. She reached for them, but Adam pulled back. "These ones," he said, "weren't written by you." The subject lines were familiar. The words, chilling. One stood out. "He doesn't deserve you. Let's make him pay." Eleanor staggered back. "I never sent that." "I know, but she did." Naomi. Somehow, she'd hacked into the Claire email. She'd been corresponding with Adam, manipulating him, making him believe he was confiding in Claire, when really, Naomi was feeding him poison. And Eleanor, she had become the perfect alibi, a pawn in her own game. The next day, Eleanor followed the trail. It led to a small apartment on the edge of Queens, under a different name. She had found Naomi's lair, walls lined with photographs, notes pinned like some twisted spiderweb of faces and timelines. Photos of Eleanor, of Adam, even of Gray, and in the center, a mirror. Naomi had written something in lipstick across the glass. "You built her, now live with her." Eleanor sat on the floor. Her knees gave out. The rage, the fear. It all dissolved into a strange, haunting clarity. She had created Claire to escape a life she couldn't bear. But in doing so, she'd built a blueprint for obsession. And Naomi, lonely, grieving, and broken, had found purpose in becoming Eleanor's fiction. Naomi had never wanted to be Eleanor. She wanted to be seen. The police found Naomi a week later in a small motel outside Boston. She didn't run, didn't scream. She handed herself over with the same grace Eleanor had once practiced in front of a mirror. Her words at the time of arrest: "You gave me the mask. I just wore it better." It took weeks to process, but Eleanor testified. She handed over everything: emails, voice recordings, journal entries. Adam sat behind her in court every day. When it was over, Naomi was sentenced to 12 years for digital impersonation, stalking, and harassment. But in the courtroom, Eleanor couldn't help but feel that the punishment didn't quite match the damage. Naomi hadn't destroyed Eleanor's life. She had revealed it, exposed the rot beneath the veneer, the lies Eleanor had told herself, the one she thought she was in control of. Claire had started as a game, a disguise, a thrill, but Eleanor now understood something far more chilling. When you create a mask and wear it long enough, someone else will try it on, and they might never take it off. The final moment came 6 months later. Adam and Eleanor sat across from each other in a sunlit cafe. No surveillance, no lies, just two people trying to make sense of what had nearly destroyed them. "I'm not Claire anymore," she said softly. Adam smiled sadly. "I don't think you ever were." They sat in silence. Then he reached across the table and touched her hand, just briefly. A silent truce. Not a perfect ending, but a true one. Want more true stories that make your heart race and your mind spin? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Twisted Truth Room, where reality is stranger than fiction and the truth always finds a way out. Hit the notifications bell so you never miss the twist.